July 28, 1932, Washington, D.C. On the muddy flats near the Anacostia River, 20,000 men were living in tents, not enemy soldiers, not criminals. American veterans. Men who had fought in World War I, who had stormed German trenches in France, who had been gassed, shot, wounded, who had won the war. Now, 14 years later, they were homeless, broke, starving. The Great Depression had destroyed everything. Jobs gone, savings gone, homes foreclosed. So they came to Washington, brought their families, set up a camp, called themselves the Bonus Army. They had one demand: pay us what you promised. In 1924, Congress had promised World War I veterans a bonus, payment for their service. But the money wouldn't be paid until 1945, 21 years away. The veterans were dying now, their children were hungry now, so they marched to the Capitol, peaceful, organized, carrying American flags. They asked Congress, pay the bonus early. We need it now. Congress said no. The veterans refused to leave. They'd waited 14 years. They could wait a few more weeks. Maybe Congress would change its mind. President Herbert Hoover watched the camp grow. 20,000 veterans, women, children, living in shacks made of scrap wood and tin. It was an embarrassment. The capital of the United States had a shantytown full of starving war heroes. Hoover wanted them gone. On July 28, he gave the order: clear the camp, use force if necessary. The job went to the U.S., and the officer in charge was General Douglas MacArthur, Chief of Staff, the most decorated American general from World War I. MacArthur had fought alongside some of these men in France. He knew what they'd been through, but he had his orders. What happened next would haunt MacArthur for the rest of his life and define how America saw him for decades.
This is the story of the day MacArthur turned American tanks on American veterans, and what he said when the world asked him how he could do it.
Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the stories of World War II and the decisions that changed history, even the ones that happened before the war started. To understand what happened that day, you need to understand who these veterans were and why they came to Washington. The Bonus Army started with one man, Walter Waters, a veteran from Oregon, unemployed, desperate. In May 1932, he organized a group of veterans to march to Washington. They called it the Bonus Expeditionary Force, a play on the American Expeditionary Force that had fought in France. The idea spread. Veterans from across the country joined. They hitchhiked, rode freight trains, walked, thousands of them. By June, over 20,000 veterans had arrived in Washington. They set up camps. The largest was on the Anacostia Flats, rows of makeshift shelters, families living in tents. They weren't violent, they weren't destructive, they were organized. They had rules. No alcohol, no fighting, respect the police. They just wanted their money. Congress debated the bonus bill. The House passed it, but the Senate voted it down. The veterans stayed. They had nowhere else to go. President Hoover saw them as a threat. Communist agitators, he claimed. Criminals hiding among the veterans. His advisors told him, these are just desperate men, war heroes. Treat them with dignity. Hoover didn't listen. July 28th, the order came down. Evict them. The Washington, D.C. police were sent in first. They tried to clear some of the smaller camps downtown. Scuffles broke out. 2 veterans were shot and killed by police. That's when Hoover called in the army. General MacArthur received the order at his office. He read it carefully. His aide, Major Dwight Eisenhower, was standing nearby. "General, is this necessary?" Eisenhower asked. "These are veterans, our men." MacArthur's face was hard. "The president has given an order. We follow orders." "But sir," Eisenhower, "I've seen what mobs can do. I've seen disorder turn into revolution. This isn't about veterans. This is about maintaining order." Eisenhower disagreed. He thought this was a mistake, a political disaster. But MacArthur outranked him. And MacArthur believed the Bonus Army was a threat to the Republic. At 4 p.m. MacArthur assembled his forces. Tanks, cavalry, infantry with fixed bayonets, tear gas canisters. It was an overwhelming show of force against unarmed American veterans. MacArthur put on his full-dress uniform, medals, ribbons. He wanted to be visible, in command. Eisenhower tried one more time. "Sir, maybe you shouldn't go personally. Let the field officers handle this." MacArthur shook his head. "I lead from the front. Always have." The army moved down Pennsylvania Avenue toward the camps. Thousands of civilians came out to watch. Some cheered the soldiers, others booed. When the veterans saw the tanks, they couldn't believe it. One veteran, Joseph Angelo, had fought in France. He'd saved MacArthur's life during a gas attack in 19. MacArthur had personally given him a medal. Angelo stepped forward as the army approached. He called out to MacArthur, General MacArthur, it's me, Angelo. Remember, you gave me a medal." MacArthur didn't stop, didn't look at him, kept riding forward on his horse. Angelo stood there, stunned, tears in his eyes. The soldiers moved in. Tear gas was fired into the camps. The veterans scattered, coughing, crying, trying to grab their children. The cavalry charged, sabers drawn, not to kill, but to intimidate, to push the crowd back. The infantry advanced with bayonets, herding people away from the camps. The tanks rolled forward, crushing the makeshift shelters, flattening tents. Fires broke out. Whether from the soldiers or from knocked-over stoves, no one knows. But the camps burned. Families ran, mothers carrying babies, veterans limping on old war wounds, everyone fleeing the tear gas and the flames. By nightfall, the camps were destroyed. The bonus army was gone. 2 infants died from tear gas exposure. Dozens were injured. Hundreds were traumatized. The next morning, newspapers across the country ran the story. Front page, photos of American soldiers attacking American veterans. The backlash was immediate. Critics called it a disgrace, a betrayal of the men who had fought for the country. MacArthur held a press conference. A reporter asked, "General, how do you justify using military force against veterans?" MacArthur's answer was defiant. Those men were not veterans. They were a mob, insurrectionists. If we had waited, if we had shown weakness, this could have turned into revolution. Another reporter, "But sir, many of them were decorated soldiers, men who fought in France." MacArthur's voice hardened. "I commanded men in France. I know what soldiers look like. What I saw yesterday was not soldiers. It was a rabble, and we restored order." The room was silent. MacArthur continued, "The institutions of our government were directly threatened. It was a question of whether the mob or the government would prevail. The government won, but the public didn't see it that way." Hoover lost the election later that year. Many blamed the bonus army incident. It made him look cruel, out of touch. MacArthur's reputation took a hit too. The man who had been a war hero was now seen as the general who attacked veterans. Years later, Eisenhower wrote in his memoirs about that day. He called it one of MacArthur's biggest mistakes, a disaster that could have been avoided. MacArthur never apologized. In his own memoirs, written decades later, he defended his actions. He claimed the bonus army was infiltrated by communists, that it was a genuine threat. Historians disagree. Most evidence suggests the bonus army was exactly what it claimed to be, desperate veterans asking for help. But MacArthur never changed his story. In 1936, 4 years after the incident, Congress finally passed a bill to pay the bonus early. The veterans got their money, too late for the men who had been gassed and beaten in 19. Joseph Angelo, the man who had saved MacArthur's life in France, never forgot that day. He told reporters, "I thought he'd remember me. I thought he'd help, but he rode right past me like I was nothing." The bonus army incident is a complicated story. It's about desperation, about politics, about pride. MacArthur believed he was protecting the country from chaos. He saw the camps as a threat, not a protest. The veterans believed they deserved what they'd been promised. They weren't asking for charity. They were asking for justice. Both sides thought they were right, but history has been harsh on MacArthur for this. The image of tanks rolling through veterans' camps, of tear gas choking men who had survived the trenches of France, it's hard to defend. MacArthur was a brilliant general. He would go on to lead in World War II, to rebuild Japan, to command in Korea. But July 28, 1932, was not his finest moment. It was the day a war hero became the man who attacked his own soldiers. If you were MacArthur, would you have followed Hoover's order? Or would you have refused? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about the decisions that shaped history, make sure to subscribe